G'day guys, Dean from Blog for the Blood God here, and in my 10 plus years of tournament experience, there's one thing that I've done consistently throughout that has always been a massive boost to my tournament results, and that is developing a little cheat sheet that I use to basically plan out what I'm going to do and when, and what are the important things to remember at the various stages throughout the game. So in today's video, I want to go through some examples and show you how you can create these sort of cheat sheets of your own, these reference cards, so that you don't forget when to activate things, you don't forget to do things, you don't forget what stratagems are available to you at certain stages during the game and those sorts of things. So really, really powerful, and it definitely helped me improve, particularly when jumping onto a new faction or trying out new things within a faction. Like you might be trying a different legion or a different chapter or something like that. So creating these reference sheets is an absolute huge boost, and it's something that I've learned over my years of experience, and I want to help impart that onto you guys here. So with that being said, let's jump straight into the video.
Blog for the Blood God.
G'day guys, today I wanted to share some advice that I think is really, really important and really, really practical that will help those who are either new to a faction, new to competitive 40k, or are just playing around with some different ideas and exploring some different areas within their faction. And that is to basically create yourself a cheat sheet or a reference card. Now this is something that sounds really simple and sounds really basic, and it absolutely is. But it gives you so much of an advantage on the day when you're at a tournament. You've got time pressure, you've got lots of decisions, you're trying to learn not only your own army, but you're also trying to understand your opponent's army and what they can do. You're also dealing with the social interactions and meeting new people, and there's just so much happening at tournaments that it's really, really easy to forget things. Now, I'm sure almost everybody listening to this can recount more times than they can count how many times they've actually just fucked up a game because they completely forgot something. You know, they forgot to bring a unit in from reserves. They forgot to, use a certain command phase ability that they have access to. They forgot to use a stratagem that they have access to, that they've planned their list around the use of this stratagem, There's tons and tons of things. They forgot that they have exploding sixes to hit in combat or something like that, right? And the amount of times that you'll look back on a game and be like, fuck, if I just hadn't fucked up that one thing, I wouldn't have lost that game. And sometimes all you need to do to jump from like 50th place to 10th place is just win one or maybe two games that you would have otherwise lost. That's all you need to do. A couple of those small wins, and sometimes all you need to do to win one of those games is earn a couple of victory points that you otherwise wouldn't have earned. So sometimes all it takes to change you from 50th at a tournament to 10th is like 10 victory points, Sometimes that's literally all that it takes. So what I want to talk about today is the specifics on how to create one of these reference sheets or cheat sheets, and how to use them in games and the importance of it, and some of the things that are practical examples of times when I've used them and they've saved my skin. So this will be similar to the scorekeeping video that I did, where I talk about advice on why it's important to record and keep your own scores. But yeah, so let's just jump straight into it, I guess. So what do I mean when I say a reference sheet, and how do I go about creating one? So this is something I do it even when I'm familiar with a faction. I always like to have one of these on hand. I don't always use it, but it's always good to have one there. And basically what I do is, after I've written my list, I've come up with my plan, I know what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to, this is how the list is going to function, this is my overall strategy, those sorts of things. I then get just a blank Word document, and I literally write, first thing I write down is secondaries, right? And what I do is I go through the secondaries that are available to me, and I pick which ones are going to be my baseline secondaries, the ones that I'll take in almost every game. And then I also put notes in there. For example, I might say I'm running a Creations of Bile list. I did this when I won the Risky Rollers Open. I wrote down, okay, I'm going to take specimens for the spider, and then in brackets, I wrote, unless assassinate or bring it down is better, right? So now I know when I get to the table, the first decision I make is I just look at their army and I go, is Assassinator or Bring It Down going to get me more points, yes or no? If they are, I put them in as my secondary. If not, I take Specimens and Spider. So what I've essentially done is I've made that decision before I get to the table. This is my priorities. This is how I'm going to select my secondaries. And then I go, okay, then I'm going to take Warp Ritual, unless my opponent has access to significant Deny the Witch abilities, such as a 4-up Deny strat and heavy Psyker presence, right? In that case, I'm going to take I'll take a different secondary, it might be I'll take Behind Enemy Lines or something like that, right? So I come up with a priority objective, and then the sort of supplementary objectives that I'll take if my priority one is jeopardized or compromised, right? So I write all of that down on my reference sheet. That's the first section. And this way, when you get to the table, you don't actually have to do any thinking. You just have to go through the process and sort of remind yourself of the decisions that you've already made. And that means that you can spend that time at the start of the game when you're talking to your opponent, you can spend that time learning about their list and what they can do, because you already have thought about this. Whereas if you don't have this all written down, often you'll come to the table and you'll be like, oh fuck, what was that thing? And then, you'll go into the game, and then halfway through the first turn sometimes, you'll be like, oh fuck, that's right, I was supposed to take Warp Ritual. Why did I take fucking, this other secondary? Now I'm fucked. So if you go through and have that really deep thought and deep dive your secondaries before the event, pick what you want, write it all down, and then when you get to the event, you just refer to it. So that's the first important step on this cheat sheet or reference card. Then what I do is I write down any pre-game abilities that I have, right? Or that I'm planning to use. So this can be things like redeploy 3 units. Say when I'm running Alpha Legion, I was like, redeploy 3 units, pre-game move for 1 CP, up to 2 units, right? So you write all of this stuff down so that when you go, okay, cool, I've got my secondaries, and you go, okay, cool, pre-game, we're about to start the game, we've rolled off to see who goes first, we're going to pre-game abilities. You just look at it and you go, okay, these are my options. So you then are able to then execute those options. And then you write down, I break all of my abilities down into phases. So I write down command phase, and then that'll say Abaddon can put reroll hits on something. That's one command phase ability. The Dark Apostle has his 4-up for Illusory Supplication. That's another command phase ability. There's, you go through your list that you've already decided on, and just pull out any command phase abilities, including stratagems that you use during your command phase, or things that you have to do for your secondaries. So for example, scoring your banners is a command phase. At the end of your command phase, you score your banners. So I write that down in the command phase section. So basically what you're doing is you're writing down everything that needs to be done, or that you have the ability to do in your command phase. You write all of that shit down. So for example, the Tyranids player they have a stratagem where basically in their command phase they can pick a monster and give it the Synapse special rule, right? But that's something that they have to do in the command phase. So if they don't do that, and then they get into they do their movement phase, and then they shoot some stuff, and then they realize, oh fuck, I need to make myself Synapse. Well, it's too late at that point. Most opponents will be pretty reasonable with those sorts of things, and they'll probably let you still do it. But some opponents won't, and they're actually well within their right to not let you, because it's out of phase, right? So having that stuff written down so that when you get to your command phase, you scan over the notes. Takes 5 seconds to just scan over the notes of this is all of the stuff that I can and should do in the command phase. And then you go, cool, I'm going to make sure that I don't forget. That prevents you from forgetting any of that stuff, Then you go movement phase. Okay, cool. These are the things that I can do in my movement phase. And obviously you don't need to write down each unit that you have and what its movement characteristic is. But you write down things like you might have a stratagem that allows you to fall back and charge, right? So you write down 1 CP, fall back and charge. So that when at the start of your movement phase, when you're planning out your turn, you can look at that and be like, ah yes, cool, I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to spend the 1 CP now, and I'm going to fall back and charge, because you might have forgotten that you have the ability to do that. But if you have it all written down, you can scan over it, and you might decide not to. You might decide, okay, cool, I can see that I have that stratagem available, but I'm not going to because I don't need the CP, and I'm pretty happy to stay in combat there because I think I'm going to win that combat anyway, so I'll just stay there. Or I have Mark of Slanesh, so I get to fight first anyway, so fuck it, I'm just going to stay there. So, but having all of those things written down is the important note here, because it allows you to sort of be reminded of what you have the potential and the capacity to do, so that you don't forget these things. There's the stratagems you want to write down, there's any abilities that you have that activate in that phase, all that sort of stuff. Like if you've got, say, a harpy or something like that that does mortal wounds in the movement phase, you might want to write that down so that you know, oh, make sure when you move your harpy that you move it over an enemy unit so that you can drop bombs on it, you know, that sort of stuff. And this really rapidly speeds up your game as well. It means you get the game done a lot faster, which is really good if you're on a chess clock, because you don't have time to be sitting there and trying to scan your memories to try and remember all of the stuff that you can do. If you've already written it all down, then you just read it and you know, okay, cool, that's what I have access to. So, for example, you know, then you go into, say, the shooting phase, right? You do the psychic phase as well. You write down all of your important stuff that you need to remember to do in the psychic phase. In the shooting phase, you write down your stuff, and you might write down you scan through your codex and you find any stratagems that you have access to buff your shooting. You write them down in this section. And that way, when it comes time for your shooting phase and you're looking at your opponent's exposed something, you want to kill it, you want to outdo your shooting, instead of being like, do I have any strats that buff my shooting? I don't know. And then you pull open your codex and you have to scan through all of the stratagems to see if there are any that buff your shooting. If you've already done that pre-game and then written those things down in the shooting phase section on your cheat sheet, you just scan through that shooting phase section of your cheat sheet at the start of your shooting phase, and then you're like, yep, cool, these are the 3 stratagems that I have that are relevant, and I don't want to use any of them. Cool, end of story. Fast, very fast. It allows you to smash through those games really quick, and it also means that you're not going to forget. You're not going to shoot and then be like, oh fuck, that's right, I have a stratagem that gets me +1 AP on my bolters. I forgot about that. If I'd have remembered, that would have been sick. I would have, you know, blah 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 blah. So yeah, using the cheat sheet for the stratagems is really important. And then things like morale phase, you want to make sure that you're remembering to do that, because a lot of people forget. And morale phase is one of those things where it's like, some games it's really irrelevant, but there are some games where it's hyper relevant. You know, like when you kill a whole bunch of custodies, but there's like, you know, maybe there's a squad of 6 and you kill 4 of them or 5 of them. And if you forget to do the morale phase, you're not going to kill that last one. But if you remember and they roll high on that morale check, you might actually kill an extra one, which means you killed a whole unit, which means you might get grind them down, or it means that they don't have a unit. You know, it's huge. That can be a huge swing, just remembering to do the morale phase. So things like that are really important. And then there's also like, there's certain abilities that you do that are in weird timing. So remembering those is really important. And then what I also do is, so I write down all of the phases, but then I also write down another phase, which is opponent's turn, right? But depending on the number of things that you want to fill into this, you might decide to split it down even further, but I generally just have one category, which is opponent's turn. And this is things like Night Lords have a 2 CP stratagem that means your opponent can't fall back, you know? There's, you know, a 4-up to deny the witch from any Mark of Corn unit, you know, like things like that. You write these things down so that at the start of your opponent's turn, you're like, yep, cool mate, your turn, off you go. You pull up your sheet and you just get a refresher of all of the things that you can do in their turn. And that way, when they go to do their psychic power, you remember, that's right, I have the ability to deny it, and you can think whether or not you want to do it, and then do it. Whereas if you haven't written that down and they cast their psychic power and it goes off, and then they cast their second psychic power, and then you're like, oh fuck, that's right, I can deny it. I want to deny that first one. It's like, well, it's too late. You know, I've already cast the second power, so you can deny this second one, but you can't go back and deny the first one because, you know, we've already moved on. So reading those things of what can you do in your opponent's turn, reading that shit at the start of their turn is massively powerful. And then I also do things like, for example, in the assault phase or the fight phase, right? I'll write down exploding sixes from turn 3 onwards. You know, in the shooting phase, I'll write exploding sixes on rapid fire and heavy weapons turn 1, exploding sixes on rapid fire and assault turn 2, and that way I just know that, you know, every turn I open that up and I read it. And even though that's something that you know, like everybody knows that you get that, the amount of times that I've completely forgotten and I've just I've gone into my turn, I'm excited, I've got my opponents out of position, so I'm able to do some really heavy damage here, this is going to be sick, I get real pumped up, and then I just go into it, and then you completely forget shit. Whereas if you're just at the start of each phase, you just go, hang on a sec, you pull out your cheat sheet, which you can print this out and have it with you, or you can just have it saved as a document on your phone that you check, or whatever, you know. And if you do it on your phone as a document, that has the advantage of it being able to be a living document. You know, you can update it as you go, so you can remember, you know, as you're going through the games, you can add shit to it, or you can delete shit from it if you realize, oh fuck, I wrote that down in the psychic phase, but it's actually something that I do in the morale phase, or fucking whatever it is, you know. You can sort of update the document so that it's always accurate. And this also saves you with having to remember how many CP a stratagem is, for example, because you plan it all out, you write it down in your document, and then you just know, you know, when I'm using that strat, that's what it is, boom, off I go, done deal. You don't have to pull the codex open every time, and if you're dealing with PDFs, you have to fucking open the PDF, which might take a while to load, and then you have to scroll through it and try to find the right page, which can be a pain in the ass, and, you know, whereas if you've got it all written down, it's super fast. And I genuinely believe that this is one of the main contributing factors to my success. It's definitely up there, because it essentially results in me just never forgetting things. And sometimes 40k literally comes down to who forgot more shit, you know? Like if you play somebody and you don't forget a single rule, but they forget 10% of their rules, well, then you have a 10% strength advantage on them, often, you know. And sometimes it's even worse. Sometimes it's a super clutch rule that they've forgotten, you know, and then you're just like, for example, I played Emperor's Children for the longest time, you know, and the amount of times that I'd play against an Eldar player and they would forget that they have a 1 CP stratagem to reroll all hits and wounds against Slanesh units. And my whole army was Slanesh units. So they would forget, and they would go in and they would just be like, they might even spend, I think they had a stratagem that was like 2 CP for reroll wounds, or something like that, but then they had a 1 CP strat for reroll hits and wounds, but it was only against Slanesh. So a lot of Eldar players would dismiss that strat, because how often do you face Slanesh? So they'd be like, cool, they would just dismiss it, and they would be well aware of their 2 CP strat for reroll wounds, because that's something that they use often, because that works against everybody. So what they would do is they would use that strat against me, and they're fools. Like, they've just fucked something up, but I haven't fucked any of my rules up. You know, I've been playing because I've been checking my cheat sheet at the start of every phase. If they had a cheat sheet that said, against Slanesh do this, and within that example you would probably put that at the start of the sheet, so it's not something you would put in each turn, because it was a stratagem that could be used in like the shooting and the fight phase. So what you'd probably do is you'd probably put at the start, if you're versing Slanesh, remember this stratagem, you know? Or you might put it at the start of the shooting and at the start of the fight phase, I don't know. It depends on you. You'll find your own best practice for how you sort of structure your cheat sheet. But having those things all written down means that, like, my opponent not having that anti-Slanesh strat written down meant that they often forgot that it was a thing, you know? And then what would happen is that it'd often be like turn 4 or 5 that they would be like, oh fuck, I just remembered I have this bloody anti-Slanesh stratagem. Meanwhile, I've been like, everything they've been doing is bouncing off me, or they're spending like big CP investments to get more or less the same, you know, results. So that the fact that I didn't forget and they did is one of the things that contributed to a lot of my wins. So, and I mean, if it's one of those things where if I remembered and it wasn't like a top table game, I would tell them. Like, they'd go to spend 2 CP to use a strat to reroll wounds. And I'd be like, you can reroll hits and wounds for 1 CP because I'm Marcus Lanesh. And they'd be like, oh my god, thank you. So, like, if it wasn't a top table game and it was like, whatever, I'd do that. But in a top table game, say it's round 5 or round 8 or whatever, and you're both doing really, really well, like, absolutely not. I will be remembering my rules and I will be doing my thing. And if you're at this level, if you're at a top table, playing off for the win at a tournament, well, there's a sort of expectation that you'll remember your own rules. I'm not going to remind you and tell you how to beat me. So, the fact that I have everything written down gives me that huge advantage. Another thing was like, when I was playing around with Tau for a little bit when their codex first dropped out, it was like, I haven't played Tau in fucking forever, and their codex is all new, and the way that drones work is all new, and the way that the Storm Surge has to do an action in the fucking movement phase, which finishes at the fucking shooting phase, and then the drones do an action which happens at the shooting phase. Like, it was all over the place, right? So the way that I insulated myself to make sure that I just didn't fuck any of that up was to write it all down. And then it's just a matter of, at the start of my phase, okay, I need to do the action with my marker lights. And then at the shooting phase, it would say that, marker light action is now finished, go on to that. And you're essentially like writing out a script for how the game is going to play. And that's so fucking helpful for new players who are new. It's really good for new players who are new to the tournament scene. Like, you might be pretty familiar with your codex, but a lot of the other things at the tournament will get you flustered, will get you sort of distracted, and therefore you'll end up making mistakes that you'll be like, I can't believe I made that mistake. I never make that mistake. Why did I fuck that up? And it's because the tournament throws a spanner in the works. So having all of those things written down in advance will protect you and insulate you from that, and then you don't make that mistake. And so that's what I sort of mean when it comes to cheat sheets. That's sort of the idea on how to write one out, is to break it down by phase, break it down by important engagements, important actions, those sorts of things. Make sure you put in army-wide rules as well. So like at the start of each turn, you'll go, okay, start of turn is a really good section to have, where at the start of the turn you might put, you might even just put notes to yourself. So start of the turn, you'll write, check what your secondary objectives are. Start of the turn, remember your opponent gets -1 fucking to hit if they're outside of 12 inches. That's something that's really easy to forget. So at the start of your opponent's turn, you need to remember, okay, if they're going to shoot at me, if they're outside of 12, they get -1 to hit. Stuff like that. Or little reminders like, in the movement phase, I always put hug cover, because sometimes you'll be like, okay, cool, I'm going to deep strike in over here, and I'm going to go in and charge that stuff, and blah, blah, blah. And then you deep strike in, and then you fail the charge, and then you're like, oh crap, now I'm sitting out in the open, and oh crap, I could have very easily been hugging this ruin and still been within charge range, but I didn't because I was too busy thinking about the assault phase. I was too busy thinking about the charge that I'm going to make and how I'm going to kill everything, that I didn't plan for what happens if I fail that charge. Whereas if you set this as a reminder in your movement phase, so you're deep striking in, but when you're deep striking in, you're like, oh, that's right, I need to hug cover. So I'm going to deep strike these Terminators in the ruin, so that when I make the charge, I go in and kill you, but if I fail the charge, I now have Terminators in light cover. So good luck killing them. So that's another sort of useful little trick that you can put on your cheat sheet. And yeah, hopefully you found this useful. Hopefully this helps you generate some stronger tournament results, because one of the main goals of this whole YouTube project that I'm working on, this whole thing, is that I want to impart some of my knowledge and experience onto the next generation, if you will, the newer people coming up in the tournament scene. And I also want to help those who've been in the tournament scene for a while and are struggling to improve their results. I really want to help them improve their results. So I want the community to flourish, and I want to see as many people having those really good games where you walk away from the game proud and happy. I don't want people walking away from the game feeling like, I fucked up why did I make these mistakes, and kicking themselves, you know. So part of that process is having these things written down so that you don't make mistakes that you'll then regret. And yeah, so I hope you guys find this useful. I hope you find it helpful. Let me know in the comments below if this is something that you've tried before, if this is something that you're, you know, that you've got some experience with, and if it's something that you do adopt. You know, maybe you listen to this video, you think it's a good idea, and you try it out at your next tournament or even in your next practice game. You know, get something written up, try it out. If you do and you see positive results, let me know. I'd love to have a conversation with you guys in the comment section below. And yeah, with that being said, I'm going to love you and leave you. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Cheers. Alrighty guys, I hope you enjoyed that video and found it useful and found it a little bit of educational, and I would really like to know if you guys try this out, if you get results, you know, if this helps improve your game. I guarantee you that it will. So please, if you do adopt this and you do try it out at tournaments, let me know how it went for you. I really want to see those results coming back in. This is the sort of stuff that I really enjoy doing, is taking some of my experience and knowledge from my years in the tournament scene and imparting it onto the newer players who might not have that experience and might be looking for ways to sort of step up their game. So that's what I want to do here, and I'm really happy to do it, and I love the feedback that I get from you guys, and I love the conversations that we have in the comments section below. So keep that up, let's keep that rolling, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Thanks for tuning in, and a special thank you to all of my Patreons. They go a long way to making sure that I can get motivated to keep this channel going, keep generating that content every couple of days. It's a huge support, and it also helps me get new content, new equipment, new microphones, new lighting, all of that good shit. So huge thank you to you guys. You're an absolute inspiration. I appreciate every minute of it, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Cheers.
Look for the blood god.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment, he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.
Do your objective markers ever get lost behind terrain or other models and become difficult to see? Do they ever get bumped and accidentally moved during a game? And do they ever spark arguments about distances? Well, not anymore. Introducing the blog for the blood god, not even remotely patented Neoprene objective markers. Made from the same material as astronaut suits, or maybe military equipment, or probably neither of those things, this 2mm thick neoprene synthetic rubber is tear resistant, water resistant, and is designed to last. But that's not all. The blog for the blood god, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers come in a variety of different designs and styles to suit any faction represented in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. These objective markers are a perfect gift for yourself or a friend, and are a perfect way to flex and show your opponent that not only are you a smarter, cooler, and better 40k player than them, but you also have more disposable income than they do. For the low price of $25, you'll get not one, not two, but 6 neoprene objective markers, perfectly designed for 9th edition Warhammer 40k. But wait, there's more. For a limited time only, people who sign up on Patreon to support Blog for the Blood God as a Skull Champion tier $5 per month member will gain access to a custom design service where I will design a unique logo to support their gaming club, like the one I did to the left here for the Potato Farmers local gaming club here in Melbourne. Follow the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today.